Welcome everyone to ACDE number 201. A couple things on the agenda today. Most importantly, we can hopefully finish the scope of Pectra and be able to move forward with the specs. After that, there was some conversations that happened around EIP 4.4s in the past couple of weeks, as well as 7.639 about dropping history, so we'll discuss that. Then there was an edge case that AXIC wanted to revisit around capping the transaction size, the transaction gas amount. And then after that, if we have some time left, there were a couple potential ACD process improvements things I wanted to cover. To kick us off, Perry, Barnabas, either of you want to give an update on where DevNets are?
Yeah, so we have Mekong continuing to run. The Grandine team has pushed a lot of fixes. I think they're mostly okay now. There's still some problems, I think, in Ethereum, JS, and Nimbus EL. So it would be great if those teams could have a look at it, but we're at like 97-ish% attestation performance. I think we're mostly good on the Mekong front, and we're mostly focusing on getting all the PRs merged in for DevNet 5. I've listed 3 open PRs, so it would be good if the relevant people could have a look, leave a comment, read through the PR, and so on. And the DevNet doc has been updated to also showcase where the tests are. So thank you, testing team, for that. You can also see what the status of the tests are right now. I think that's about it from us.
Okay, awesome. So the PR, there's one around adding SSD support to the Builder API, and then 2 CL ones on the EL. It seems like the 2 open ones are on the execution API. Anything else?
I just refresh your page.
Okay.
I just updated.
Okay, so on the EL side, there's an update to which EIP is this? 7691. Is this the?
Yeah. So
this
76.
Okay, this is the
691 is the. Yeah, exactly. That's the 691, and we wanted to add the update fraction specification, and I think Ansgar has already done that. It just requires the, I guess, owner to merge it in.
Okay, great. Is 7691 actually merged as an EIP?
Yeah,
okay.
Should be.
Okay, nice. Okay, yeah. Okay, and so this one, so we agreed to the change. We agreed to the change last week. I don't think we added it to the Pectra Meta EIP, so I'll do that. After this call. And I guess aside from that, any other EL PRs that you want to bring people's attention to? Oh, Ansgar?
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly say, because for the 7691 change, that indeed, it's only requiring like one of the DAP authors to basically approve, but it's done. And then there basically was this open question of like what exact update fraction we would go with, and we had like a discussion over the week and picked the number that's basically the middle sensitivity between 3 and 6, because basically, right, like we could kind of most have 6 blobs less than the target and 3 blobs more than the target, so we basically picked the middle sensitivity. So now a very full block will have a slightly less than 12% increase in base fee, and a fully empty block will have slightly more than 12% decrease. So that number is in there, and that's about to be merged.
Got it, thanks. Tony?
Yeah, I was just in the process of reviewing that PR, and it looks good to me. There's only a small typo, and then we can basically merge it.
Sweet. Okay. Any client teams have other updates or thoughts, concerns they want to share about either Mekong or the current Devnet 5 spec? Okay.
Maybe,
Please.
yeah, one point that Lachlan just brought up. Maybe he wants to bring it up. 7702 TX pool.
I'm just checking again if anybody has looked into it or implemented it. We're in the process of implementing it right now.
Never mind is looking into it, but others can comment on that if we have others here.
Yes, I'm here. There was a discussion on Discord. Specifically to Lachlan, actually. We had some suggestion, but it seems the discussion sort of stalled.
Where on Discord was that?
It was in Interop.
Okay. Okay, I see the 7702 transaction pool.
Yeah, Marek just linked it in chat.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, I guess as people work on it, it'd be good to share any updates or designs there. Any other updates on the transaction pool? Anything else on the current DevNet 5 specs or Mekong that people wanted to bring up? Okay. Then moving on, it's worth chatting about the Pectra scope changes. So it feels like we're close to finalizing Pectra in terms of scope, but we've been saying this for many months now. I think it would be ideal if we could do so on today's call, because then if we're heading out for the holidays in like 2-3 weeks, we can be in a spot where we ideally have a final set of specs to work with, and we can start writing tests and having clients implement that, and come back in January with sort of a clear target to implement. On the CL, it seems like everything is pretty much resolved, or we resolved those things last week. I think on the EL, there's 3 major open questions. First is just BLS gas pricing. There was a lot of back and forth on that, and need to figure out if there's something we're happy with to move forward, and if not, what do we do? Second, this came up on last week's call, but EIP 7623, there was a lot of back and forth about whether to include it alongside the other changes we've already included. And then lastly, EIP 7762, which was an adjustment to the Blob base fee that we also discussed last week and couldn't quite get to a solution. So maybe, I would start by going over the BLS one, because that one's already included and we sort of have to fix, and then we can discuss potential additions after that. Is there anyone here who has context on the latest BLS pricing back and forth? I believe, was it Marek who opened the PR?
Yes, so I took Pavel's numbers and I opened PR, and in the link here we have Nethermind BLS pricing proposal. It would be great if it will be validated from other teams, and I think Pavel had totally different idea how to price MSM operations, but I don't understand fully the idea, so we need to agree with Pavel about this.
Have any other teams reviewed this, or does anyone else have a strong opinion about the pricing?
Just hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, so from the pricings, at least from what we know from the current numbers, Nevermind for G1 MSM would need to go up by 2.5x, Besu and Geth would need to go up by 2x, and EVM1 would need to go up by 3x. For G2, Nevermind's 1.5, Geth is 2x, and I think EVM1 is also 2x. So we could go with these pricings. It's just that they're more coarse than I guess we'd like.
You mean by these pricings, you mean like Nethermind's current, like Marek's current PR?
So we just take the worst case of like what everyone's already given us. So for example, EVM1 is 3x for G1 MSM. So we just say G1 MSM, we just put it up by 3x and this covers all of the clients. And then for G2 MSM, we can just scale it up by 2x, and then this covers all of the clients as well. It's just that it's a more coarse way to do the pricing.
Right. And what's the, like, do you have a sense for the impact, like, on users of having this more coarse pricing scheme?
Yeah, so I guess we don't know exactly because it depends on the use cases.
Yeah.
My suggestion would be to sort of commit to some sort of maybe even a course pricing, and then we can use one of the other tools that are out there to figure out a new curve to use. Because at the moment we just don't have any, we haven't like committed to any pricing.
Yeah.
I would like to avoid the 3x that's there, but it's like the only one that we've seen empirically that covers everyone else.
And is so I understand, like, yeah, EVM1 was slow on some of these. Is that the one that's covered by the 3x increase?
Right. So the next slowest one would be the Nevermind proposal, which is 2.5x scaling.
And I'm not sure about this, but is EVM1 used in production by any client? Like, I agree we should probably go with the slowest one, but yeah. Oh, sorry.
Not yet, but at some point later, probably next year, we would like to switch Aragon to EVM1. But at the moment, it still uses our Golang EVM, which is essentially the same as the one in Geth.
Got it. Nethermind uses the same library, but I guess I'm trying to understand, why is EVM1 slower than the others, and does it make sense to put our worst case on an EVM that's not being used in production today, or should we just use like whatever's the yeah, like should we just use like whatever's there? Yeah.
I guess to answer the first question, I think the reason why EVM1 is different, or why we're sort of having some issues coming onto a good price, even if they use the same libraries, is because everyone's basing it off of EC Recover, but EC Recover is not the same across every library.
I see. Radek?
Yeah, so this is not exactly about the EVM1 itself, but about the BLista library, which is used by, as you noticed, by the Nevermind, but also by Ref. It's used by Ref. So yeah, and the benchmarks basically No, I cannot tell anything about the exact benchmark results, but this is not exactly of VM1, but of the library we use.
I'm not sure I understand the implication.
So this means that it's not only case for EVM1. I mean, this the problem with the library, and that's all. That's all I
Okay.
wanted to say. That yeah.
Right. So Nevermind uses the same library, but it's a 2.5x. So this goes down to the issue of EC recover not being the same across everyone, because everyone's scaling it based off of EC recover.
And yeah, anyone from Geth or Besu have had time to review? Okay, so Jared says Geth would be good with Nethermind's proposal. My sense is if Besu is also good with it, we should move forward, even if it's like slightly underpriced for EVM1.
Sorry, just for clarification, is this the proposal to reprice across the board?
I
Or are we
mean,
just talking?
the PR I just linked.
I see.
This is to reprice the G1 MSM for 2.5x. I guess, is there, what do people think about the proposal to commit to at least like, let's say the 2.5x or the 3x, and then wait for the gas cost optimizer tool to possibly give us more finer grained numbers, but just commit to at least something?
Okay, there's a proposal to agree async. I guess, yeah, Marek, how much time do you think we need to agree to this? I think if we could get the consensus on your PR as like a worst case that we maybe, or as like a base case that we maybe modify later on, but that, you know, assuming there's no major issues to move forward with today, that would be better. But yeah, is there a reason to like push this back async before we can make the call?
I'm not sure. I'm just seeing that there is no clear number, and we can discuss whether it should be 2x or 2.5. But it seems that I will agree quickly async, but we can try to discuss it here as well. Just
Okay.
Devnet, we should agree before Devnet 5 and we should have final pricing before Devnet 5. That is my proposition.
Yeah. And okay, so basically said the main person who reviewed this is not on the call. I think it's fine to move it async, but I would try to speed it up a bit more than just before DevNet 5. If we could get to a resolution like on Monday's testing call at the latest, that feels good. Yeah.
And this is a resolution on the coarser grained estimation that we can then make more finer grained later on. So basically the 2x or the 2.5x or whatever.
I would try to get us to like as final of a pricing scheme as quick as possible. Stokes, yeah, is that what you want to comment on as well?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, I think Kev was suggesting moving ahead with this for now, and then yeah, if people want to take another couple days to like finalize something, maybe with more fine grained analysis, that seems like a way to make progress today. Because it sounds like this PR gets us directionally closer to what we all like, right?
Yeah, as I understand it, the only concern was EVM1 for one of the pricing schemes, but I think if all of the production clients are fine with this number, we should go ahead and merge this one. Yeah.
I would agree.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, the one thing, okay, it's probably worth getting a sanity check from Besu on it as well, but assuming that Besu can give it a +1 async today or tomorrow, I think we should go ahead and merge this, and then, yeah, we can discuss finer grained pricing schemes async as well, and potentially on the call on Monday if we haven't come to a resolution. Okay, if someone from the Besu team can ping Gary and let him know to review this as soon as possible, that'd be great. But yeah, assuming there's no objection there, we'll go ahead and merge Murex PR. Sweet. Anything else on BLS? Okay.
I guess I could ask a quick question. If anyone has a BLS signature verifier that works with the latest for Pectra, I guess just, yeah, let me know on Discord or something. I have something from a while ago I might try to update, but it might be nice just to have like a sense of like end-to-end cost for this thing.
Okay. Okay, next up on the agenda was EIP 7623. I believe, Dano, you raised some issues on ETH Magicians, and then Tony opened up a PR to address them. Yeah, Tony, do you want to give a quick recap on the latest changes?
Yeah, so we discussed that also on ACD last week on the consensus layer call, and the main contention we always had with 7623 was more like not about the mechanism, but more like the scope of Pectra itself. And regarding Dano's suggestions, so I included them and incorporated them into the EP. You can now find a more elaborated backwards compatibility section and also security considerations, including the concerns we clarified that William raised a few months ago about the gas sheltering. And yeah, I would now really propose that we include it and ship it in Devnet 5, and especially in light of current discussions that happen in the community about the potential gas limit increase, and also we agreeing on the Blob increase. I think it would be important to yeah, make sure that we limit the EL payload size.
Thank you. There's a couple +1s in the chat for 7623. And yeah, this PR seems to have addressed Dano's issues. I guess, does anyone think we should not include this?
I'd like to hear what EL clients think in terms of implementation complexity. I think that it has a lot of merit on a security front, but I would just want to get a sense of, you know, is this going to add weeks of delay to Pectra or something like that?
Okay, so Rhett says the impact should be low. I guess, yeah, any other team have a sense of like, does this take hours, days, or a week to implement? Same. Okay. Besu Ethereum JS also say it's a low impact. And then Light Client says it adds complexity when reasoning about transaction costs and may introduce some weird gas sheltering schemes. Oh, yeah, and a good question from Perry, like on the testing side, do we have a sense of how big of a lift this is to include?
No sense as of yet, but I think it's not gonna be so straightforward. I hope it is, but I don't have like a clear idea. We have made some preparations for this exact EIP in our repository, But still, we need to check and see. Probably a couple of weeks, indeed, just to implement the tests.
Okay, and how do you feel about the rest of the fork so far? Like, is the rest of Pectra in a relatively good spot, or yeah?
Yeah, we have PRs for everything right now. For Devnet 5 at least, what has been included. It's looking good. We're probably gonna be able to make a release soon. But yeah, for 7.623, I don't think that should be a blocker.
Okay.
But if anything comes up, I can sure just signal it.
Got it. Daniel?
Yeah. I just wanted to propose that maybe instead of including it into Devnet 5, we go ahead with Devnet 5 as is and include it in the Devnet 6 to not block the testing of the Devnet 5. Because if it's going to take a few weeks, maybe for the test, I don't know. I don't think we should wait that long.
Yeah, I guess one question is, yeah, how quickly do we expect to have DevNet 5? If we think we can launch DevNet 5 in the next week or two, then I would agree with this. But if we think DevNet 5 is going to take another few weeks, I would bias towards having DevNet 5 be the final DevNet. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I guess, yeah. Does anyone think like we could launch DevNet 5 in the next week or two?
Maybe it makes sense to talk first about the other EIP that's potentially included in Pectra, because this would change the scope again now.
Okay, yeah. So I guess assuming like independently of whether this is a DevNet 5 or DevNet 6, are we happy adding this to Pectra? We've discussed this many times. My sense is people generally want to add it, but there's concerns about the scope and the size. And people today feel somewhat optimistic that it won't cause too much of a delay. So I would lean towards including it so that we can finalize the spec. But yeah, anyone have a strong objection against that?
I think the main blocker is 7742 still on the implementation side. So if this is a very small implementation on the EOS side, then we might not even be ready with 7742 before we would be done with this new EIP.
And 7742, you mean the EL or the CL work that won't be done?
I haven't heard any client teams that are like 100% done with it.
Okay. Is there anyone done with it? Okay, so I guess, okay, Rest is 95% of the way there. Base 2 is also closed, but not done. Okay, so I guess if teams are mostly done with 7742 and think that 7623 is not a huge lift, I would move forward with it. We can discuss maybe the DevNet 5 versus potential DevNet 6 spec after, once we have like a better sense. But yeah, I think to make sure that we actually have a final set of like specs to target now, basically, it's better to make the decision and move forward on that than to delay it another couple weeks. Any objections to include it in 7623?
No objections. I do wonder if we can go ahead and include it now and then essentially take it out if it looks like it's a bigger lift than we thought in a week or two.
Yeah, we always can.
Maybe we can give the testing team some time to look into it, and we essentially want to block if they are to say that they would take another 3 weeks to have the tests for 7623, then we don't want to block DevNet 5 just for this one EIP. We can continue without it and then do the testing in parallel. But if it's easier than we thought, then I guess we can include it right now.
That makes sense. Mario?
We could have an estimate on Monday's testing call,
Okay.
if that's okay.
Yeah, perfect. So I think if, we can move forward, include it in the fork, and then on Monday's testing call, we can iron out what goes into DevNet 5 versus a potential DevNet 6. Okay, sweet. Last candidate for this fork is EIP 7762, which is the minimum blob price increase. We discussed this as well on last week's call. Couldn't quite come to a decision. Anyone have thoughts about what to do there? Tony?
Yeah, we discussed it on last week's consensus layer call, and we basically said we don't want to do all the changes that were proposed at once in Pectra. I think there were some discussions about picking out increasing the minimum blob base fee and only shipping that potentially. And yeah, I'm indifferent about that one. But yeah, I think we should stick to not including all the base fee changes in Pectra.
Ansgar?
Yeah, so basically, yeah, I think the decision is indeed to like not ship the big package of base fee of blob fee changes, but that's also not the CIP. The CIP that's can't shape is two things. One is just the minimum price fee increase, minimum base fee increase, and that's literally a one-line change. But then the AP was modified based on feedback last week to also include a excess gas reset. You can have a look at the EIP. It's still like very small. It basically like the gas the excess gas reset is basically just like one if statement in the calculation, where basically if basically we are at the fork height, return 0, otherwise normal calculation. It should be like a minimal extra implementation overhead in addition to this one-line change. So it's like maybe a 4-line change now. I think given that it's so tiny and it has like a meaningful improvement to UX for rollups, and they've been signaling that this would be valuable for them, I would be in favor of adding it.
Yeah, and maybe one more thing, which is like in terms of complexity of test cases, if there's already going to be changes to the update rule, I think the additional test cases from including this EIP, along with the blob increase, which will adjust the rate of change, will be pretty minimal because you'll already have to change the test cases for that.
Yeah, I forgot to mention this. This is actually a really good point. And that was one of the questions that did come up in the update fraction change, where we're actually specifying the point of the hard fork is a little bit annoying, and that would completely go away if we merge the CIP, because then it just gets reset to 0 at that block, so we don't need special specification of that block. So actually, I think it actually makes testing probably slightly simpler even.
Okay. Has any EL team reviewed this? Okay, Ethereum JS seems in favor. Anyone else have thoughts or comments on it?
I do have a question. Are we talking about just raising the minimum fee or these other things in this PR?
Only the fee. So the PR in the agenda is the PR I made thinking about Fusaka, where we if we don't do it now, we might do all of them at once or nitpick the ones we want to do for Fusaka. But if we agree to do it in Pectra, then we would only do the increasing the min base fee and reset the excess gas.
Okay, and we just don't have the PR for that yet.
I think Ansgar has one.
It's
already merged. It's
Okay.
like the current state of the EIP. So like the decision is about the current state of the EIP, no PRs. Like
I
no
see.
PRs, the current state of the EIP as is.
Okay. I think we
Okay.
said the wrong link. I
Yeah.
think I tried to find it.
Yeah, okay. Sorry. I also thought that the decision was about the the open PR by Tony.
It looks like it's 9090 was the PR at least.
Yeah. Okay, so okay, and I'll post the EIP as is. Oh, thanks, Ahmad.
Okay, yeah. So this is much simpler. I think I could see this. It does add another EIP, and it does add a little bit more overhead of testing and complexity.
And the downside of not doing this is we stay in this awkward world where sometimes the blobs are effectively free and sometimes they get repriced very quickly.
I think the problem is more that they get repriced very slowly, and we see
Oh, sorry.
in
Yeah,
a lot
sorry. Yeah. Okay, relative to the market. Yeah.
recently, and then what happens is when they reprice very slowly, and now it's happening like every 20 hours or something, where we have like a 3-hour period of price discovery and a 3-hour period of going back down to less capacity overnight when there's less demand. So
Okay. Yeah.
in that 3-hour period, we're like basically defaulting to first price fee market.
Right.
And that's a problem because rollups don't want to think about volatile fee markets.
Well, it makes it so that there's like, if the rollups are charging their gas, they have to charge their gas on the rollup based on a first price fee market, which nobody understands, versus saying, okay, your gas on base is a function of what the base fee is on ETH today, or what the blob base fee is on ETH. So it's like much easier for the rollups to read and provide gas pricing for their users when it's just the number from the controller rather than the number from the controller plus whatever's going on in the first price fee market, which is also complicated by whatever else is going on in MEV land on that particular block.
Right. I mean, I think the strongest counter argument I've heard is what like Clan said here in the chat. It's just early, and presumably we will hit quote price discovery for the blobs, and this issue will just go away.
I think like we are at price discovery. It's just that the demand is much higher during the day. And so you can't have like a situation where demand doubles and then we're like using 6 blobs during Eastern time, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and then also be saturated at night. And so there's always going to be like an awkward period between like whenever that switches on and off, there's going to be an awkward period, and we'd like to make it as small as possible.
I don't think we should orient the Ethereum fee market to be US focused.
Well, this PR doesn't do that though.
Just like,
yeah.
I mean, that's what he's saying. He's saying that no one uses blobs, quote, during the night.
No,
during the night where?
Right, but it's more that whenever no one uses blobs or whenever people decide to use blobs again, we're too slow to adapt, right? Like.
Yeah, and I'm saying empirically, you can look at the data and it's happening every night rather than, oh, we have, like if it was once in a while when there's an airdrop, I think that would be a different story.
Yeah, like I said, this is very early in the story of blobs, and I don't think that we need to come in and start meddling with the actual price mechanism right now. Let's revisit it again next time that we have a fork. And if it's still having problems, it's possible that it makes sense to do, but it's so very early on this process still.
Ben?
Yeah, but aren't we like proposing doubling the blobs? It's just going to make it worse. It's not like we're not meddling.
There are already several changes to the controller happening, as well as a blob increase in the fork. And we have very strong theoretical reasons why this would increase price discovery with very minimal changes to, like, in total, this is at most $100,000 a year change to the blob prices, but we think it will make the speed of price discovery much faster. And we now see in the data that this is happening very often. So
We also thought that price discovery was just going to happen one time before we implemented blobs.
and that was clearly
like
wrong.
we can, yeah. So I'm saying that how can we clearly know that this proposal will fix all the problems in this blob market? Like, I don't know that's clear that this is the case.
That's not what the proposal claims to do. It claims to be an adjustment, which is low overhead, and we know will improve by some factor. It will not make the blob market perfect, but it will improve the blob market.
Ansgar?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I would really strongly recommend adding this EIP. It's a small change, and really the situation will get significantly worse from today to this, just because with this change in throughput, we now maximally can increase the base fee by 8% per block instead of the today's 12%. So it just takes significantly more time to ramp up. And so basically having to oscillate back and forth between the like one way and the efficient kind of market clearing base fee just takes much more time now. So it's basically worsening an existing problem, which is already not great for rollups. So rollups really, from talking to them quite strongly, would prefer us adding this. And yeah, like testing complexity is basically zero because we already need the tests for this part of the calculation logic. And implementation overhead is very small. So to me, it's like a very clear-cut case.
I'll highlight a comment by Barry saying, like, yes, every EIP we add, even if it's small, they're all small changes, and we have probably somewhere between like 12 and 15 of them in the fork right now. It will delay shipping Pectra. So like, if we decide to add this, it's fine, but it also means that we ship whatever scaling increases through blobs and adjustments to the base fees slightly later. And yeah, we should be fine with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to also add that the point is that this will delay stuff. The question is the trade-off worth it? Yeah. The answer can be yes, but it is an honest question. Is this the trade-off we want to make?
Yeah, I think what Ansgar is saying in the chat is exactly right. That the actual, like, if you look at the actual implementation of this, there is a one-line change to a constant, and there is like a three-line change to reset the excess gas. And then the testing implications, many of the tests are overlapping with tests that must already take place because of what's happening with the other EIP, which is adjusting the controller. And so I doubt that there will be much marginal effort needed to increase, like to provide those tests there, because they're already going to be needed for the other rollup EIP that's coming in this fork.
How big of a change is this, assuming we add it after? As much as I would like to have the spec finalized today, it doesn't feel like there's like super strong consensus to move forward with this. But assuming we didn't, and then in a month we're feeling good about things and want to add this in, are we like duplicating work or like making your lives harder by not making this decision today?
Well, I said that I think there are a lot of tests that are like going to be needed for the other Blob EIP, which are changing the controller. Those will need to be rewritten with this change in mind. But the code itself is, again, just 4-line change. So I don't think, and I think the blob reset should happen anyway, because we're increasing the number of blobs anyway. So really, like, the marginal contribution is a 1-line change to a constant, but then on the testing side, those will need to be adjusted.
Yeah, another comment. I don't know if any like rollup contributors are here right now, but given that they're kind of the user of this feature, it'd be nice to hear from them. I do wonder if like there are rollup teams here, you know, the like sense of consensus would be maybe a bit different, as then it would feel like there's like a bit more support for this. I do think I'm weakly in favor for what it's worth.
Okay, Ansgar says there's roll call next week as well. I would maybe just kick the can down the road for 1 week with this one, bring it up on roll call, have a better view of what the current state of things is, including 7623 and the 69 changes, and then make a decision on this one next week. Ideally, if we can have a sense of like, of testing complexity, and if we actually do, you know, save some like overall testing efforts by adding this as part of the other changes to the fee market, then great, maybe we move forward. But it does feel like it's worth taking an extra week to just think about this specific one, and hopefully have every other change, locked in today. Anyone feel like we have to make a decision right now? Okay, so let's, Ansgar, if you can bring it up on roll call, I think that'd be quite valuable. If we can have clients and testing teams review it, in the next week, that'd be great. And then, I think on ACDC, we can finalize this one, but then get all the other EIPs sorted today.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, there's some comments in the chat saying we finalize today. So do we? I'm skeptic. If we finalize today, my sense is that we don't include this, because it's
the only way we can have Devnet 5 this year is if we finalize today. If we ship it or if we skip 1 more week, then we're not gonna have Devnet 5 this year anymore.
Yeah, and I guess, okay, Perry has another suggestion that maybe, we can freeze DevNet 5 and make these changes later on. I do think it's worth bringing this up on roll call and seeing like how important it is for rollups. So I guess what I would do is, assume everything is finalized except this thing, not have this be part of the scope for DevNet 5, and on Monday we can move forward with like speccing out the DevNets. And then on next Thursday, we may decide that we don't want to include it because everything else is in DevNet 5, and we think that that's like a good thing to ship with. But it feels like we need to know a bit more both on the DevNet side and on the rollup side. Daniel and then Ansgar.
Just for clarification, does this mean the proposal is to not include it in DevNet 5 and then maybe have a DevNet 6 for this one EIP?
I mean, DevNet numbers are made up. We can have as many as we need to.
It's more the overhead for testing that is great.
Correct. So, and I think, look, if on Monday we decide that everything that's been included so far makes sense to have in DevNet 5, then at the latest on Thursday, we decide whether we want to add this to DevNet 5, not add it at all, or have a separate DevNet. I think if on Monday, looking into all this, we already realize we're going to have 2 different DevNets, then it does change things a bit. But if we're only adding a second or a 6th DevNet for the CIP, then we may be less inclined to move forward with it.
Okay.
Ansgar?
Yeah, I just want to say like that seems like the worst of all worlds. Like we should just decide today, because if we say, oh, we're gonna decide next week, but by next week it might be too late for DevNet 5, and then we're not going we might not want to open a new DevNet for it, then we're basically saying, well, we're rolling the dice on whether there's still room to include it. So at that
Well, I
point we
think
might
to
as
be
well
clear,
just decide not to include it.
that's exactly what we're doing. Like we are constrained by capacity. So yeah, we sort of have to understand a bit better how much capacity we have and what the impact is before making the decision.
Well, by delaying it, we change the cost. Like right now, the cost is small but existent. I acknowledge that because it does require extra changes. But by next week, the cost might be much larger because it requires an entirely new DevNet,
Oh
which
no,
would of course be unacceptable cost.
right. But I think okay, but I don't think that we can know today whether or not this requires an extra DevNet. And I think that's my point. Is we
Yeah, but all I'm saying is then we should understand that by making this decision, we are likely pushing this out of Pectra. We're at least risking that it's a good chance that, because of course, if it requires a new DevNet, we will not include it. So basically we are saying we're just rolling like, and it's fine. If people basically prefer it not to be in Pectra, but then we should just make that decision. I think it's a fake. It feels like you're implying that it's a lower cost. You're basically saying, by not making a decision today doesn't mean we are not including it, but it means that it might not be possible to include it anymore. So we should just make the decision today. And it's fine if the decision is not to include it, but then everyone should be aware that that's the decision. Like we should not make this like, oh, maybe next week there might still be room to include it. Like either we include it today or we don't include it.
right. And okay, so I think if we want to make the decision today, then clearly like we don't have enough consensus to include it. And my sense is there's a small chance just this changes in the next week if we ask rollups and we have a better sense of the DevNets. If people want to make the call today and just not include it, then great. I think we can move forward with that. But I don't feel like we do have consensus to include it. My sense is like there's some client teams that are opposed. We have like a fairly high burden on the testing and DevOps teams already. So I get, do all the other EL teams want to include this? Yeah, I don't know. It seems like Geth is pretty strongly opposed. Nethermind is in favor. Baseus Weekly in favor. If we didn't have a bunch of other things and the fork wasn't already so full and we weren't bottlenecked by testing, then maybe. But my sense is it doesn't make a ton of sense to move forward with it as is. Yeah, I don't. Anyone else have a strong opinion? And yeah, like I'll like highlight Mariel's comment that like this does require significant tests, significant testing effort. So like I would lean against. My personal preference is that we can revisit this next week, but if people want to like close that can of worms today, we can also just finalize the Pectra scope with that. Okay. Then yeah, I would not include it today. And we can discuss a bit more async if we want to have another conversation about it next Thursday. But yeah, I don't think we have enough consensus to move forward. And yeah, we already have a bunch of other things that we've included. Anything else on Pectra? Okay, so let's review the different changes, have a conversation about DevNets on Monday, and figure out where we stand and if we can get DevNet 5 shipped by the end of this year. Okay, next up, history expiry, the other thing at the top of our priority list. Piper, you shared a document on the agenda. Do you want to give some context on this?
Yes. Hello, everybody. We made a decision at the R&D workshop, and we've got all execution client teams on board for dropping, rolling out what we'll continue to call 4.4s, with a timeline of dropping a significant part of the history by May 1st of 2025. There's a document linked in the PM repo issued today. It goes to a HackMD document that gives kind of like a summary of everything that's going on here. The official EIP number for this is 7639. So we're going to have some fun confusion here as we continue to call it 4.4s, and the actual EIP number is a little bit different. Thanks to Light Client for getting 7639 updated. It specifies a new version of the ETH protocol version 71, for which clients will be allowed to stop responding to certain messages about history. The exact thing that we agreed on was dropping block bodies and receipts only for pre-merge data. So that does not include the header chain. That does not include any data after merge. And loose estimates suggest that this accounts for a couple of 100 gigabytes of disk space. This gains us some amount of leeway here on that 4 terabyte hard drive limit that was coming up on everybody. The agreement in terms of what consensus was made was strictly about clients no longer being required to respond to this data over dev P2P after that drop date. The exact implementations that clients will be taking with respect to how they handle this data are kind of up for grabs. Every client is able to kind of make their own decisions. We've still got clients who are implementing full sync, so executing all blocks from Genesis. They'll be implementing their own plans for how they fetch, retrieve, deal with all of that long history data. And then we've got other clients who are going to be implementing Portal Network clients for the Portal Network history network in their clients for being able to serve things like JSON RPC. That's the high-level overview for this. I've got some chat messages I'm pulling up here. Cool. I don't know what else anybody wants. We met with all of the client teams during DevCon. I think everybody knows what they're doing. The time to start working on this stuff is now, soon, so that we're ready. Light Client has pointed out that for this new protocol version, we need to warm it up, and so we need to not have it just turn on May 1st, but I think client teams need to have versions of their clients out before then that allow for both the old client version and the new client version to exist at the same time. I think that's probably most of the information here.
Thank you, Piper. Andrew has his hands up.
Yeah, so I think one comment is that we need to finalize ETH 69. And I think on our side we have some concerns about its like ETH 69 compatibility with Polygon. But we need some time to prepare, and we can do it maybe at the next OCODEVs to discuss ETH 69. Why do we need to finalize ETH 69? Because then it's kind of ETH 70 and ETH 71 built on top of that. And another comment is do we actually need a new protocol, ETH71, to explicitly like prohibit answering to a historical block request? Like, isn't it a bit of an overkill?
I was going to ask that exact same question. I don't have a strong opinion on this. Potentially, we can either answer that question quickly today, or asynchronously in the History Expiry channel if client teams want to weigh in. Does anybody have a strong opinion in favor of a new protocol version?
Yeah, so like given that 3 other clients or 4 clients are going to implement 7801, like 7801 is going to be like ETH A subprotocol, and like everyone can then cease serving pre-merge history on ETH protocol. The reason we want it to be a subprotocol is for ETH protocol to be not affected by clients potentially calling like clients that do not support 7801. Yeah, since 7801 could potentially allow you to encode the bit mask into the ENR. So like we want to not give the assumption that all clients are going to support serving on historical blocks through 7801, and that's why it has to be a subprotocol. So other clients not serving don't get hammered by requests that they can serve.
Correct, but I think that's a little bit, so it sounds like that's a little bit in favor of not implementing a new ETH subprotocol version. It seems like that can happen independent of whether a new ETH subprotocol version gets implemented.
No, because when you implement a new ETH subprotocol, you declare the new subprotocol, right? You declare that you support it, and that means that you are serving these historical blocks. If you don't declare it, then no one will ask you for these.
Got it. So I'm talking about the ETH protocol version, not whatever new protocol version 7801 goes on.
Yeah.
Which is
so since some clients are going to drop blocks and most nodes are going to drop the pre-merge blocks, it wouldn't be fair to anyone to keep saying, hey, I might have the blocks or I might not have the blocks. So we say, okay, anyone who's an ETH 70 or 71 like will stop serving pre-merge blocks. This is the idea. And if you want to serve pre-merge blocks, you just implement the subprotocol. Sorry.
And so in this version of the world, anybody who's on ETH 70 may or may not serve the block history, and anybody who's on ETH 71 definitely doesn't serve the block history.
Yeah. That's why if you go to the EIP, it says cease serving. It doesn't say you may cease serving. No, it says must stop serving. If you go and look at the language used,
right,
it's very strict.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, we can modify the language, but this is just for ETH 71. Like you must not serve the pre-merge history on ETH 71. We can make it clear that you can serve the history on other protocols, other versions.
Right. And so then we get, I think the end game of this is that we get a sharded ETH protocol on between the clients that do and don't serve historical blocks. Seems like a problematic state for things to end up in, where there's this option of staying on the old protocol and continuing to serve old blocks and kind of separate. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't like this bifurcation in protocols. Maybe we can like make ETH 70 generic enough to allow for clients who don't want to store any historical blocks to like explicitly say so.
I mean, it's if you just don't put any ones in your bit mask, that means you don't have any history that you don't want to serve. This is easy to implement if we want to do it that way. But if we want to encode the bit mask inside the ENR, then that's a little bit different. But I think I'm fine with the handshake. The handshake is not that expensive, and yeah, it doesn't need to be encoded in the ENR. So yeah, but I think Geth team still in favor of having it as a separate protocol, regardless of if we do it in this way or not, just because they want to keep the network like all, I don't know, all keeping the same thing. Light client, you can maybe say why.
Sorry, I didn't quite understand the
Like
exactly what your question was.
so what's being said is like so instead you change the language to say, instead of C serving history, we just, whoever wants to serve it serves it, and whoever doesn't want to serve it, he's allowed to not serve it, and that's it. And we don't have a separate sub-protocol for serving history. Yeah.
Are you saying ETH A as the sub protocol?
Yeah, they don't. Some people are not liking this ETH A idea. They want to keep it in ETH 70 or 71.
What was the argument against ETH A? Like, isn't it just a string that's in the handshake? Like, I personally don't really care that much ETH A versus another ETH version, but it is just a string, so I don't really see why it's a major issue for people.
From my point of view, if ETH A is fine. What I don't like is if we have ETH 70, like for this sharded block proposal, and then ETH 71 for actually stipulating that it must not serve blocks, because then we have a bifurcation in protocol.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So maybe there is a confusion. That's why I asked Light Client to change his protocol version to 70, because we're gonna not use the 70 version, because since it's a new sub-protocol, it does not conform to the same versioning scheme as the ETH version, ETH protocol version.
So to round this back up, because I think that we might be at a point where we do actually have an agreement. 7801 goes on a different sub-protocol. It is not part of the ETH sub-protocol. Anybody who's doing 7801 things is on a new separate protocol with a separate string that isn't ETH. And the question here is there opposition to doing 4.4s without bumping the ETH protocol version, by keeping the ETH protocol version at 70 and just having the drop-off date happen, and at that point clients can stop responding to those messages?
We need to bump the version. We don't want to stop serving history on a specific version, because then when you connect, you don't know if they're going to have the history or not. And if you haven't updated your client and you're trying to bootstrap, you're going to start trying to download. And if everyone else updated, you're not going to be able to ever connect to the network.
Isn't that the same case though? Because clients, isn't the same case true whether we bump the protocol version or not? Because if you don't update and you connect to the network and everybody else is on the new protocol version, whether or not...
The difference is that everybody can serve both. So you can connect on the new version.
I know, but hold on. Even if you connect on the old version, because you didn't update, you're connecting to a bunch of clients that dropped the history and are no longer serving you that data.
Well, they don't have to drop the history.
I understand.
So like if you're serving ETH 68, which is what we're on right now, then you would have the history. If you're serving ETH 71, you might have the history, but you're not going to provide that history over ETH 71, because the specification of that protocol says you will not serve that history.
So if I understand correctly, the case that you're concerned about is an unupdated client connecting over ETH 68 or whatever the version is and expecting to get history but not getting it. Isn't that true in both of these cases? That it will be connecting to clients that do not have the history and thus won't serve it? Or it won't have clients that it can connect to? Like, aren't these the same whether we bump the protocol version or not?
I think that if you bump the protocol version, it becomes explicit whether you're going to be able to connect to these nodes or not. And it would be nice if we could have this before the Prague hard fork so that we have full acceptance of that wire protocol. So on May 1st, when we start allowing clients to drop history, it is explicit. Whenever you go update your client, you can go find peers that you will not need to request history from. And if people decide to continue running nodes that download the history because for whatever reason they haven't updated their node, then they can still connect to those nodes and download the history when they need to. I don't want there to be a situation where we just stop serving the history and someone stops serving the history, and after the Prague hard fork, someone just has a binary that is Prague supported but doesn't drop the history, and they can't find a peer that they can download the history from.
Okay. I think that we just need to do a bit of async discussion here on the exact rollout plan for this, because this is all just specifics in the actual implementation. And it doesn't seem like we have a clear consensus today. And I don't know if discussing it further in the call is the best thing. What I'll do here is try to get a write-up posted of kind of the two different approaches and get it out there and see if people want to weigh in on which direction they want to go with.
I think it makes sense to do that. I have a question just to make sure I understand. What is the rationale for not having an explicit separation? Like whether it's 70 and 71 or 69 and 70, like what do you gain by not having an explicit tell that there's a different protocol version that people are running? I assume at some point we'd want to deprecate the ETH protocol versions that serve full history. So, yeah.
I think there's two things. One is that there isn't much of a difference in the actual protocol version, the protocol definition. It's just the semantics of it, of what the client does behind the hood, but it doesn't actually change the payloads at all. So in terms of the actual messages, they're all exactly the same. It's just about the behavior of the request when it comes in. And then I think the second objection was that was just about added complexity. There's some cross-network compatibility things that I think Aragon brought up that they're working on. And so just having another protocol version to work with, I think, was just adding complexity to their stack. I may have misunderstood that.
Andrew?
Two points. One is that there is this protocol ETH69, which we discussed at some point, but it's not finalized yet. And it has some proposed merge cleanups, and we realized that it might be not play well nicely with Polygon. So, but we need to think about it more and maybe discuss it again. But basically, ETH69 is not relevant to 4.4s. It's just like it's like sequentially, it's something that we should finalize if we are talking about things like ETH70, right?
Got it.
And why? I also think that we need one single protocol to actually that works for all nodes. Either they store some fraction of historical blocks or not, because that will solve this issue when you need to download historical blocks. That should be it should be explicit in your peers, like which block your peers have, and if we do things like 7801 concurrently with a new version of the protocol that actually prohibits certain historical blocks, that creates a bifurcation in the network, because then if you want to improve the protocol, then you kind of how do you do it? Your protocol namespace has split into two. So my strong preference is to have a single protocol say ETH70 that works both for clients who decide to store a shard of historical blocks and who don't.
Okay, got it. Okay, so I think, yeah, Piper, if you want to write something up and post it on Discord, that'd be great. We can continue this conversation async. But yeah, it seems like we're at least moving forward a bit. Anything else on history expiry?
Not from me.
Sweet. Okay.
Do we need to?
Oh.
Are we going to need to do this? I mean, if we decide to have this additional per wire protocol, like I think it is kind of important that we roll this out with Prog. How do we sort of add that to the Prog hard fork meta?
I had a point about this at the end of the agenda, but I think in general we should start adding non-consensus changes to meta hard forks. Yeah, maybe we can discuss that at the end, but we have done some things like this in the past, like with the self-destruct deprecation, but it does feel important to signal them. But yeah, before we get into that kind of worms, there's a couple other things, but yeah, that's an important discussion. Anything else just on the actual spec or technical changes? Okay, next up, Axic shared this on the agenda. I don't know if he's on the call, EIP 4803. So a while back, we discussed adding a bunch of bounds to constants in the protocol, and we did add a couple. And this one, I think, was never confirmed. So yeah, Alex, do you want to give some context?
Yeah, the one we actually merged back a couple of years ago was 2681, limiting the account nonce. And there was another like a larger EIP called 1985, which was proposing bounds to pretty much everything. And at the time, we agreed to this the account nonce limit. We also agreed to split up this 1985 into individual smaller changes. And the limiting transaction gas maximum is one of them. This EIP is proposed to be enabled from Genesis, and what it does is no transaction can have a gas limit higher than 2 to the power of 63 minus 1. And the reason for this is it allows simplifications in the EVMs. With using 2 to the power 63, it can be handled as a signed number, and checking whether an out of gas condition is reached is a matter of checking whether the gas became negative. The reason this could be enabled from Genesis is that most of the clients, including Go Ethereum, already do this internally. They take the gas value as a 64-bit number. And the second reason is it is prohibitively expensive to create transactions with the limit higher than this, because you need to pay or have the funds available upfront. At least this is the case on mainnet. It may not be the case elsewhere. Although it seems quite unlikely that this condition would have been hit outside of mainnet. That's the EIP. There's a bit more detail in it, not too much more. And my question is, whether there's like any strong reasons against this, or should we consider, spending more time on maybe any of the questions, any of the analysis questions, and eventually enabling this.
One quick question I have is why use a different constant for this and 2681? Like one of them is 2 to the 64 minus 1, the other one is 2 to the 63 minus 1. Should we just use the same number everywhere?
The reason to go with 63, because then it can be a signed number, and the gas out of gas check is much simpler.
So I guess, yeah, there's a comment by Barnabas around like just testing and inclusion in the fork. So even if we retroactively add this from Genesis, we need some tests for this. So it feels like a bad time to like add those tests, given we have a bunch of stuff for Pectra. But that aside, you know, assuming we got to this when Pectra was done, do people have any like conceptual objections or design objections?
It would be helpful to see if there could be some sort of example to see how you're using this negative gas value. Like I kind of understand that it's possible to use this to know that it's out of gas, but if you could link to some sort of example where a client is doing this and like what the implication, that would be helpful for me.
EVM1 was doing this, but the way you could do it, you just subtract the gas and you check whether it's a negative value. And internally, CPUs would usually have specific instructions for the negativeness check. So technically, it can be cheaper. I think definitely this can be one of the points to debate. You know, what is the limit, 63 or 64? And that is a valuable discussion to be had. Setting that aside, can we at least agree whether conceptually putting this limit is something people would agree with, or there's strong reasons not to? I think the 64 versus 63 discussion is something we can do async.
Okay, so it seems like there's no objections. I guess in terms of next step, Alex, if you're able to open a PR, we have a meta EIP to track these like retroactively applied EIPs. So I think that, yeah, what I would do is just open a PR to that EIP to like list this one. And then, yeah, we don't have to merge the PR now, but in a couple months, once we're through the Pectra testing, we can yeah, we can revisit it and hopefully have like the 63 versus 64 bit figured out. Yeah, Alex?
Sounds good. I briefly would like to respond to what Ben mentioned, the EIP 7825, and actually left a comment in Ethereum Magicians regarding this. So 7825 proposes to introduce a lower limit, a limit of 30 million. And my comment was that I think the PR I'm proposing can be enabled retroactively, whereas 7825 is probably something you may not be able to enable retroactively. But the two are kind of related. And I think essentially you could have both at the same time. One specifies the hard cap, and 7825 is more like a soft cap on the, you know, one is an implementation detail and the other is a limit which we may or may not change over time.
Yeah, and I think 7825, if we can never retroactively apply, because you could imagine someone like, you know, the EIP hard codes at the 30 million now. So like, yeah, if the gas limit changes and like someone, you know, we decide to include this, we need to have a specific blocks where like we actually activate this. Yeah, so I think they're, yeah, they touch the same thing, but they're different like scopes of implementation for sure. Okay, anything else on 4803? Okay, well, yeah, thanks, Alex. Let's yeah, open up a PR against the meta EIP for retroactive EIPs and then discuss the specific constant async. Anything else about, I don't know, EIP specs that people want to discuss before we move to the awkward devs process stuff? We have only 3 minutes left. Okay, then I'll try to get through these quickly. But first, so we discussed this in Bangkok. 3 ideas came out of the awkward devs process improvement sessions. One is adding a decline for inclusion status to meta EIPs for hard forks. The idea there is that you we decide to accept stuff into a hard fork and we don't have a formal way to reject something from a hard fork. We sort of implicitly do so by just not accepting it. But it would be valuable to be able to signal like this is not something we want to do in the current fork. It doesn't mean we never do the EIP. Obviously, anyone can work on any EIP and they're free to propose it every time there's a new fork, but we do spend a lot of time discussing EIPs and their inclusion in forks. So having a formal way to say we don't want to include this one in the current fork would be valuable. Does anyone disagree with having this status? We don't have to like use it and like we wouldn't like retroactively use it, but it's something we could just have in the future. Okay, 2+1, so I'll merge the PR. Other thing, so this just came out as well, adding non-consensus changes to meta EIPs. So we have meta EIPs for hard forks, and it's clear, why we need them because there's this set of changes that happens at a specific block. But one challenge with that is it means our process often biases towards things that have to activate at a specific block. We, for example, 4.4 is the best example where we spend years talking about it and it somehow doesn't get quite prioritized because it's not on the same list as everything else. And we also have this other category of stuff like, neutering, self-destruct, and other like potential protocol changes we want to make in the future that we don't have like a formal way to announce. So the proposal there is that we start including non-consensus changes in hard forks, and that for something that's a non-consensus change, like say 4.4s, basically the implication is that clients will have this feature ship at the latest for the hard fork. So it's fine for teams to ship something before the fork goes live. It doesn't all have to activate at the same time, but people can assume that on mainnet, something like 4.4s or whatever the new EIP number is, will at the latest be activated by then.
I think that makes sense. I guess one thing to note is, we still have the ability to ship things like this without hard forks, but this is sort of addressing the false positives depending on how you look at it.
Correct. So we have we can ship stuff before, and what that would look like in practice is just whenever there's a hard fork, we can just add those things that we shipped previously to the list and tell people as of this block, all those things are active on the protocol.
Yeah, that works.
And I think historically our problem is more we don't ship the thing than we ship too many things between the hard forks. So I'm happy to revisit if we, we're only shipping networking changes and that's it. Pooja?
Just wanted to make sure here, this is for the proposals which are going to be shipped before the main hard fork and not those proposals which are going to be retroactively added.
I would keep those separately actually, because the retroactively added EIPs, every block from block 0 should implement those protocol rules. So for example, the transaction capping, and we can only add those if it's true that in the entire history, this condition was not broken. Whereas something like dropping history, we this was not true of the entire chain history. And so even though at the consensus level, it's not something the protocol sees, it feels more accurate to say, as of this hard fork, this feature is live, even though it's not like a consensus change.
And just one last point on this. Still, in the meta ape, we are going to add just the core EIPs and not the networking EIPs.
No, my point is that we would add all protocol changes, whether or not they're core EIPs, since the last hard fork. And then we can also decide, so we can both retroactively do this, we ship, 2 ETH protocol versions since the last hard fork, we should add them. But if we decide 4.4s is our priority and we should do that and not, ship a bunch of core EIPs, we can proactively decide to focus on that instead. And that's the main thing that I think we should address, is that we tend to bias towards things that can, we tend to bias towards things that are core changes because that's just what our process is built around.
Thank you for this right now. I might want to revisit this one more time, and if I have any further question, we'll get back to you. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. Okay. And then, okay, the last bit, we won't have time, we're already 2 minutes over, but something worth discussing on a future call is how things like CFI and proposed for inclusion and schedule for inclusion relate to DevNet stages, as we've seen today. Like, that's a big part of our constraints. So yeah, it might be worth considering whether we want to explicitly tie something like we only SFI something once it's part of a DevNet spec, or we only CFI something if we think, we will include it in a DevNet or something like that. And we have a rough sense of those things, but they're not 100% aligned. But again, this is a bigger can of worms, so we can bring that up on the next call. Last thing before we wrap up, I know we're already a few minutes over, Awkward Dev's holiday schedule. So we'll keep the testing call on December 23rd, cancel ACD on the 26th, cancel the testing call on the 30th, and then on January the 2nd, we'll replace ACDC by another testing call for people who want to show up. And yeah, that's it for today. Thanks, everyone, and talk to you all soon.
Thank
you.
you.
See everyone.
Cheers.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.